I will try not to say anything stupid.
Stupid is okay, but trade secrets and things are where you get in trouble.
Well, that's where we just tell people to try to catch up. No.
Yeah,
no
I was going to say, I
trade
think all your info is on your website.
Yeah, no. If you wanna rip us off, just be my guest.
Podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm Dan.
And I am Gold Eagle Jake. And today we've got a very special guest joining us. Tim Piersant is the founder and CEO of Chattanooga Whiskey. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining. We're excited. As the avid fan base will know, we had E on like a year ago, I think, to talk about Chattanooga.
Has it been that long?
It might have been. And that was a blast. It was really cool to have him on. I think we've had a master class or two since then. At Gold
I think
Eagle.
we've done like 3 or 4 total Chattanooga master classes.
Awesome.
And
and they're very good. Always.
Yeah, very good because he does a great job presenting. 2, because you guys always have so many different expressions coming out, so there's always new and interesting things to taste. And the quality is just there every single time. And most of the listeners know that I've probably said it dozens of times on this podcast that Chattanooga is my favorite small whiskey brand. So we're excited to have you and dive deep into your side of the story on things and how it all got started and how you've built it to what it is today, and so on.
I'm excited to share. I will share anything that you want me to share.
Yeah, it's a good point. They're very transparent. If you don't know Chattanooga, go check out their website. You can find probably every single mash bill and every single blend of everything you guys have put out.
Yep, it's been the cliche saying of a road less traveled. I feel like applies really well to our 14-year story. So
yeah, so let's dive into it. Tim,
start at the beginning.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning, because not only did you start Chattanooga Whiskey, but you also had to play a big role in changing the liquor laws around, if I'm not mistaken, in Chattanooga. Tell us how this all started. What were you doing before? Why did you decide to start it, and what all was involved in that process and getting some of those laws changed?
Yeah, so it all began in October of 2011. So 14 years ago this month, and it was in fact illegal to distill in Hamilton County, which is where the city of Chattanooga is. And it was illegal in the majority of the 95 counties in Tennessee in 2011 to really do anything related to the manufacturing process of spirits. So that included anything from distilling, obviously, at its core, to bottling and warehousing, material handling. It was shocking. That revelation was shocking, and I think that was the inspiration, really, to fight those laws and bring it back. It gave us the opportunity to be the first ones back in 100 years. I mean, in 2011, I don't know a lot of things like that are a lot of historical products and stories and brands like whiskey in Tennessee that you have an opportunity to be the first in a century. So the inspiration came from the discovery of all the distilleries that once existed in Chattanooga pre-Prohibition. which was covered up. I mean, no one was talking about it in 2011. I don't think anyone knew about it. And no one was really fighting to bring it back. So it was just, I was working for my dad. I mean, for nearly 8 years after I graduated from Auburn University and moved back to Chattanooga, which is my hometown. I was born and raised here. Which, I love my dad, but I was like, this has to come back, along with my co-founder at the time, and we went on a mission, and part of that mission was to fight the laws. Simultaneously, we wanted to get a product out there to begin telling the story, so we started sourcing from MGP. It was actually pre-MGP. It was called LDI, or Lawrenceburg Distillers of Indiana, at the time. And fortunately, there weren't a lot of contract manufacturers or distillers back then, so we were fortunate to have them as a resource. And we landed on a great bourbon that they had. That was a 3.5-year 75-21-4 recipe. So it's 75 corn, 21 rye, 4 malted barley. Which, if you follow bourbon today, you probably know a little bit about that recipe. But in 2011, I don't think many people knew that recipe even existed. And so that's how we launched. We launched telling the story, outsourcing, and fighting laws. And the community was, half super thrilled that we were bringing whiskey back to Chattanooga, and half confused. There weren't a lot of people in opposition except for our legislation, unfortunately. Our legislators were the ones that were really in opposition, or at least the one that we kind of needed at the time, that kept us out of an 2009 bill that passed in Tennessee and opened up a handful of counties. So we had to get past, the county commission. Then we got then we had to get past the state, and we wanted. It was largely unknown of what we were trying to do within the city. So you had a lot of people that were drinking Chattanooga whiskey, and you had a lot of people that were saying, I'm not going to drink it until it's authentic. I'm not going to drink it until it's made here. And so we got kind of louder about that to try and galvanize the community, my co-founder and I, when I say we, and created a campaign called the Vote Whiskey Campaign. And it was just to raise awareness. It was to galvanize the community, to rally around a subject, to rally around something cool, to kind of ask a question like, why are we voting for whiskey? What's happening? And it gave us an opportunity to say, it's because it's illegal to distill it in Chattanooga, and that is why it's made in Indiana. And we didn't, we didn't get a DBA back then, so that we covered it up on our label, and it didn't, it's always from day one. We said, this is distilled in Indiana. This is distilled in Indiana. And which was a little risky back then. I think there were a lot more DBAs, people trying to cover up where their stuff was distilled from. And so just trying to be transparent from the beginning, because of what our intentions were. The Vote Whiskey Campaign, it worked. By the way, we hired our first employee, Rich Abercrombie, to help us design that, because he's an artist. And fun fact: 13 years later, 13 years from then, Rich still does 100% of our artwork. He is still our lead. He's our creative director. So it's kind of a cool tie in there. So then, it was. We got the train, no pun intended, or with Chattanooga and the choo-choo and all that stuff. But we got the train on the tracks, and we were moving forward, and people were we're starting to get it. And so we rallied around we had a vote at the county commission. We needed a supermajority. We had a Tennessee State Attorney General opinion come in and say, no, you need to pass this at the state level. We formed a new bill, House Bill 102, Senate Bill 129, and we fought it, and we fought the original legislator that kept it out, and it was a dogfight. We got to the very end in May of 2013 is when House Bill 102 passed. And what was great about its passage is obviously number one is it now allowed us to be the first distillery, or we still had to build it, by the way. So in my opinion, outside of making a lot of noise around town and fighting the laws in Tennessee, it was kind of like, that was like fun marketing, you know what I mean? Like the hard work hadn't really started yet. Mm-hmm. We had to raise capital. We had to actually build a distillery. We had to make a product. We had to become an authentically distilled product in Tennessee, and we had to be the first back in 100 years. So it would have been a crime if we actually changed the laws and then we were not the first to market with our own product. So I was really nervous about that. And there was a shakeup, with my co-founder and I, and that was a setback, and took us some time to get our feet planted, more time than obviously we originally wanted, or I originally wanted. So in the process of trying to get our feet planted and building the first distillery, finally it's like, okay, law passed. We did successfully raise capital in that process, which was awesome. And then after the co-founder split up, I had to find someone to help me make the product, because I was never going to be the distiller. And that is where I was fortunately introduced to Grant McCracken, who I was introduced through Brian Sprance from New Riff. So Brian Sprance, you guys probably know who that is, but Brian and Grant worked together at Boston Beer. And Grant was actively the head brewer and head of research and development for Boston Beer, and looking for, he was distilling on the side, and he got a certification in distilling. So he was becoming passionate about it. And so when we met, honestly, it was perfect timing, because he did his research on us. He said, man, this is really cool. What an opportunity in Tennessee. These guys just finished fighting laws and changing laws in Tennessee. And this was a time where he could kind of, how they changed the rules of craft beer, he could jump in and help us change the rules of craft whiskey and craft bourbon at that time. And I think that's kind of why it was love at first sight. And so I made him a partner. I was like, I got to get you down here. He and his family, they moved to Chattanooga. He moved in 2014. He helped me build the experimental distillery. Officially the first legal operating still in Chattanooga, which, by the way, we say first legal operating still because we know there's moonshine stills all over these hills. And and then we got to work. And then, I'll just kind of jump through the timeline real fast, and then we can kind of hop, skip, and jump through it back or revisit anything. But from 2015 to 2017, Grant pushed me to explore specialty malted grains and bourbon, because we could only make 50 barrels a year off that pot still, 100-gallon pot still. We wanted to build something bigger someday, but we didn't know when that was going to happen. And so we put away 100 different recipes from 2015 to 2017, utilizing over 100 different specialty malted grains, utilizing over 30 different types of yeast, and dozens of barrel finishes as well. And so that really became the only standalone experimental whiskey distillery in the country based on the recipes we were producing. Also, it became the birthplace of our own unique style of bourbon called Tennessee High Malt, or really unique style of whiskey, but primarily, bourbon. And then we can jump into what Tennessee High Malt is, but it's basically a roasted and toasted bourbon. So then, in the first 2 years were very successful out of the experimental distillery. The investors had the appetite to continue to grow, and we then secured our next property, built out the Riverfront Distillery, much larger, can produce over 2,000 barrels a year versus 50. It's only a mile down the street, right off the Tennessee River, which is really cool. Part of our story, being on the banks of the Tennessee River, which is where where our two distilleries are located, where really all the other distilleries were located pre-Prohibition. So that's kind of a cool part of bringing it back to town. But then what was great is we got to choose from our own library of whiskey. What are we going to make? How are we going to scale it? Instead of ripping off MGP, essentially ripping off the recipe, and which was I like to kind of point to this moment as one of the riskiest moments in our 14-year history, because we had built the MGP brand. We built Chattanooga whiskey brand, outsourcing our product to MGP, or from MGP, I should say, up to an 18,000 case brand at this point. So it wasn't a small thing that we had to either replicate or recreate somehow. And the fact that we chose to take our own path with Tennessee High Malt made it far riskier. And so now it was like, okay, well, it's time to scale. And what are we going to scale? And so our team, it was in March. So the experimental distillery opened in March of 2015. The Riverfront Distillery opened in March of 2017. And it just so happened to be during March Madness, and we just so happened to have a bracket of 100 different recipes and barrels. And so our team, like Bracketology, our team literally narrowed this down to our final four. And then once it got down to the final four, Grant and I made the decision based off of what we thought would, authentically represent great bourbon from Tennessee, and not without alienating our 18,000 case customer base. We wanted it to be our own unique style. So we selected barrel number 91. So 91 was the 91st barrel distilled at the Chattanooga Whiskey Experimental Distillery. So I like to, jokingly, I say it took us 91 tries to get it right. But then we ended up. So then Grant's like, hey, we need blending power too for the future because of all these. Grant's such an innovator, so he's like, let's scale up, another dozen recipes, and so we ended up scaling up. We scaled up more than that. Over time, we've actually scaled up more than 30 recipes from the experimental distillery over to Riverfront. So even Riverfront, in its own right, is experimental. And so finally, 2019 was the time. I absolutely loved where 91 had gone from a flavor profile over the first, 2.5 years, and I just loved it. I loved where it was at. I blind tasted hundreds of people over it, didn't even tell them what it was. It was winning pretty much every time against a lot of great products. And so we decided to rip the Band-Aid off, and in August of 2019, we literally hit a hard stop on our 1816 Chattanooga Whiskey 1816 made with Indiana juice, and in a cold start, or what we thought was going to be a cold start potentially on 91. And I just crossed my fingers and hoped that we'd retain about 50% of our customer base so that we could build off of that as a foundation. And man, it was so much better than that. I think we retained everybody, and then we went very quickly over those next couple of years from a 18,000 case brand to a 50,000 case brand. And while coming out with, in 2020, we launched our rye, 99 rye. In 2021, we launched our barrel finishing series, starting off with Tawny Port, which we do a barrel finish every year. And then we launched our vintage series, Bottled and Bond, spring and summer vintage series for PIB. We launched our Founders series. We got back into single barrels. So, we just continue to push the envelope at Riverfront. In 2023, we won Craft Producer of the Year nationwide and worldwide by, Icons of Whiskey Magazine. And that was what we felt like was a well-earned. That's what we feel like we are. We feel like we're the best craft producer worldwide of whiskey. And, we're still independently owned. We distribute in half the country, all contiguous states. We have less than 40 employees, and we have an incredible tenure. I mean, led by our Chief Product Officer, Grant McCracken, who's our founding distiller, but also we've had our head distiller now. He used to be head distiller. Now our head distiller is Tiana Saul. She's been with us for over a decade and worked her way through every single position in the company almost. And, our sales team is led by people that have been with us for well over a decade. 100% of our creative is done internally. 100% of our marketing is done internally. So truly, when everything else kind of seems to be rising and falling around us, I feel like we are just steadily independent and innovative and strong. And that's what I'm really, really proud of. And there's just, every time you kind of turn a rock over around our story, there's like there's something unique underneath it to be discovered about who we are. And I just think that we have one of the best modern day authentic distilling stories, in America. And so I'm proud to share it. And, whether it's a business aspect or whether it's a brand aspect, I'm happy to talk about it. So that's my throw up for today.
That's a phenomenal story.
Yeah,
Lots of moving parts in there.
There's not much more authentic than like fighting for what you want really, really hard until you get it.
Fighting the government the American way.
Yeah.
Is Hamilton a dry county in Tennessee, or was it not a dry county? It's just the laws are tough.
No, it was not a dry county. And in fact,
Okay.
there's only a handful of dry counties out of the 95 counties here. And there were a lot of cool things that came out of that bill, House Bill 102. We were founding members of the Tennessee Distillers Guild, which became the Tennessee Whiskey Trail. And there's a lot of so there's a big tourism boom that came out of it. There were a lot of distilleries that came out of it. There's a lot of agriculture benefit that came out, local agriculture benefit that came out of it. We have some really proud supplier partnerships, like our corn supplier is Catisa Farms. George McDonald is a 5th generation farmer in Middle Tennessee. We're in Southeast Tennessee, but he's 100 miles away, or I should say up the road. But he farms 6,000 acres in Middle Tennessee, and has been Tennessee Farmer of the Year. Is a true purist and perfectionist, and we couldn't have a better partnership there. And so, anyways, that's just one example of how I think this thing has been. The benefits to Tennessee and to the distilling community in Tennessee have been multifaceted. There were some big markets that were a part of that bill. I mean, Knoxville was a part. I mean, Chattanooga is a pretty big market. I mean, it's a top 4 market in Tennessee. It's over 500,000. Knoxville is even bigger and became a part of that. Memphis is even bigger and became a part of that. There were distance requirements between distilleries that fell in that process. So you had some popular brands that popped up through that because of the distance requirements, because they were close to each other, either in Nashville or Gatlinburg. So it was like I said, it was the benefits were multifaceted.
Was there any, or was there maybe personal feeling of it as well with being in Tennessee and trying to get all this passed? Do you think it was specifically just the government that you had to get all this approved through and that were the ones giving the hardest pushback? Or do you think some of the big players in Tennessee were not wanting to see a craft distillery scene start to rise in the state?
No, I mean, it was primarily just a handful of legislators, that stood in the way, but largely supportive. I mean, they were more than supported than not, and that's how we got it passed. There were just some debates along the way on the floor, but there was one distillery that fought us a little bit. I mean, it's not probably the one you guys are thinking of. They've been very supportive, actually, and they're members of the Tennessee Distillers Guild, and but it was the reason that one distillery, and there were less than 5 distilling licenses then, so it could probably be pretty easy to figure out. It's a solid brand, national and international brand, but
have they recently shut down production?
No, they have not.
Right.
No, that's what. I know
Easy, Dan. He obviously doesn't want to say.
No, it wasn't either of those. It wasn't either.
Okay,
but there was but I understand. I mean,
there's 3 left.
I understand why it was there were distance requirements, right, or that were in play, and there was a piece of property right next to them that somebody wanted to develop and build another brand, and they didn't want that to happen, and so the only way they knew to prevent that from happening was by trying to kill our bill, kill Bill. So. Yeah, so it was understandable at the time. It was frustrating, but it just made for a better story. That's like one of those things where when you turn a rock over, you're like, "Oh, this is cool." Like this fight was kind of creative, but no, I mean, other than that, it was pretty smooth sailing as far as the distilleries go, and just really kind of one legislator that stood in our way the whole time.
It's funny that you wouldn't think in 2013 you'd have to fight the temperance movement all over again, but
well, there's a lot. I mean, this one particular legislator, he's a good guy. He has a pretty solid reputation, but he was a teetotaler. And so he just thought that he was trying to fight for what he thought was representing his constituency, and I don't think he was, I don't think he really was all about the beverage, the craft beverage movement that was happening, not just in distilling, but also in restaurants, I mean, the craft cocktail movement was firing up, right? So that was about to fire on all cylinders for the next handful of years. And really, before this is from 2011 to 2013, but before 2011, there weren't a lot of local craft restaurants in Chattanooga. It was mostly chains, So now it's an amazing restaurant scene that has, a craft independently owned, locally owned restaurant on every street corner. But that really didn't fire up in Chattanooga until 2010. I mean, we have a lot of tourism because of our mountains and our rivers and our Tennessee Aquarium and stuff. But Chattanooga was always branded as a family friend. I mean, as long as I've been here, it's family friendly. It's all about bring your family and go to Rock City on Lookout Mountain. Bring your family, go tour the Tennessee Aquarium. It's never been come explore our nightlife. It's but it has changed a lot over the last 14 years in that regard. So we have a lot more people that come up here because we have a good food and beverage scene now. So.
being so close to the border, did you ever think about heading south just a little bit and over into Rossville at all, or no?
You mean instead of trying to fight the laws?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was we were fully prepared and shopping land not south. Back in fact, Georgia is even harder to distill.
Oh, really?
Georgia, that's why Georgia has so few distilleries there. It's actually a lot harder to distill in Georgia than it is in Tennessee. But no, we actually there was a county. There's a rural county just north of us that that we were prepared to buy some land there because it passed in the 2009 bill when when you had like Corsair Artisan that started.
So did you always think it was going to be this experimental when you guys got started, or did you think you were just going to have a couple, powerhouse SKUs and that was going to be it? Because I feel like you guys are the most known for all your experimental things, and that is what's kind of leading the charge and keeping fans raving about your brand is they can't wait to try what you're going to come out with next.
Yeah, I just try to create a platform for our distilling team and Grant and Tiana to thrive, and they're smart, really really smart. From a business standpoint as well, so that they know that when we play, we have to be mindful of how we play. We can't just. I mean, we splatter a lot of paint against the wall, but it's very intentional, and it's to try and stay within the framework. There you go.
Like this one.
There you go. That's Batch Alpha. Batch Alpha is an example of splattering paint against the wall, but spending, not just months, but sometimes years, brainstorming on how we can do something like that. And so really, I mean, the short answer is no. I had no idea that we were going to be so, I would say, prolific in our whiskey recipe development and blending and innovation. But it was really, I loved what I saw in Grant, and I love what I see in Tiana and all of our distillers, and I just, as long as we can build momentum around these products, as long as there's a demand somewhere in there for these products, I'm like, let's go. Let's keep going. Let's figure out, what's next, because you never know. I mean, you hope they all sell out, but you never know when you might strike gold in one of those things too. You know what I mean? So, like 91, you got to have that bread and butter. And 91 is our bread and butter. 91, 111, 99 rye. Those are our three flagships. Everything else is an LTO. But then we got LTOs that are 2,000 cases, and we have experimental LTOs that are, 1 barrel, or 200 cases. So, or 200 bottles. So it's kind of, but yeah, I mean, I know it's a lot to manage, but we can do it because of kind of how we've set the organization up and set up these two distilleries. It's kind of the beauty of having a standalone experimental whiskey distillery too. It's kind of lower risk, over there, and we have a great following over there. So we know when we come out with something, it's going to sell.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about how you guys have kind of set the standard for experimentation. And I think Jake and I would probably argue that you guys have pushed some of the bigger distilleries to have to innovate a little bit, which is kind of cool.
That's one of those subjects that doesn't get talked about a lot. it comes up from time to time internally because we see things and we're like, should we fight that or should we just let it roll? And occasionally we have fought a couple things, and won. I mean, it wasn't like a suit or anything like that, but it was like, hey guys, like you can't, maybe a little cease and desist here and there, just like, hey, like that's like proprietary stuff. You can't just go rip off. And they're like, all right, yeah. Even a couple of big guys have been like, yep, our bad, sorry, which tells us they are watching us. They are trying to replicate what we're doing. I know we have inspired some of the biggest brands in the world to try some new things out, and I'm quite proud of that because it takes them what they have to do to come out with something like that. The amount of internal tape that they have to get through in order to come out with something like that is extreme compared to Grant and I and Tiana and Rich sitting in a room and being like, hey, what about this? So yeah, I'm like,
I mean, even beyond that, it's whiskey. I think historically, has been a low mix, super high volume industry. And I think it's cool that you guys have shown that you can actually be a high mix, low volume, distillery successfully.
yeah,
It helps, I think, inspire a lot of craft distillers, to be more adventurous.
yeah,
But also like shows like you don't have to continually follow the same business model, even in a industry like whiskey that's pretty or thought of as pretty cut and dry and how you need to operate.
Well, there was a lot of question marks early on in just our space about what the promiscuity of the buyer would look like in whiskey when everybody knew how promiscuous beer drinkers became, and it was like, will this or will this not happen in the whiskey industry? And it was a big question mark and a fear, really. And sure enough, it followed that trend, and it became very promiscuous. And for a brand like us and an operation like us, we get to I won't say necessarily thrive off of it, but I would say relative to other operations, we've been able to capitalize on that promiscuity with our innovation. And that said, trust me, like stamping something out all day, every day is a great way to make money if you can get the buyer to actually, appreciate it. So that's again kind of why that bread and butter is so important, to kind of keep the lights on and to kind of keep the brand stable. So when you walk into a liquor store, you're not seeing something. You might see something different every time, but you got to see the friendly faces too, over and over and over again. That's why 91 and 111, 99 rye have to hopefully be a part of that shelf, like anchor that shelf set. But yeah, it's it takes a lot of work, a lot of energy to innovate all the time, but culturally, internally, it's kind of a game changer. I mean, because you have a staff that just, after working there for 10 years, they're equally as passionate about the products as they were day one. Whereas when you are stamping out the same cookie over and over and over again, it's a lot harder to inspire, right? Or to keep be inspired. So that effort has been a huge benefit internally for us, for just driving a passionate work environment.
How many bottles of Chattanooga you got there, Jake?
7, 8,
Nice.
8.
Tim, I
So-
got a question that I guarantee
go, Dan.
no one's ever asked you before.
No, that's exciting.
I'm
This'll be
just
good.
trying to make sense of this here. So I was taking a little quick tour through the distillery, and maybe it's just because this is from about 2 years ago, but I see your back parking lot at your distillery. I see a semi truck delivering barrels. I see 2 forklifts in the back parking lot, but I see people hand unloading barrels out of the semi. So my question is, what the hell?
Well, those barrels are empty, first of all. So
Yeah, I know. I know. I've unloaded some of those semis before.
so yeah. So there is that. Look, man, what can I say? We're as handcrafted as it gets, you know. I mean, so yeah, that's our operation. What do you expect us to do? What else? I mean,
Oh, we always just took them off with the forklift. They were on pallets, and we just pulled them out with a forklift, 8 at
yeah,
a
but it's
time.
way more fun when you can bounce it off the tire.
Where do you guys get your barrels from?
ISC. We
Okay.
have a great partnership with them. Funny story, when we started the experimental distillery, we actually have there's a photo in our timeline of Grant standing on top of all these barrels with, giving a 2 thumbs up, and he's standing on 30-gallon barrels. That was actually our first shipment ever of barrels to begin filling. And at the experimental distillery in 2015. And it was, those barrels were 30-gallon barrels from Kelvin Cooperage. In 2015, there was a massive barrel shortage. No one could really access 53-gallon barrels. The barrels, some of them doubled or tripled in cost, and it was actually that was when there was a huge rush of cooperages. Everybody wanted to get into the barrel making business because everybody was reading national stories about how there was a huge white oak shortage. And so we start, but fortunately, it's not like we had 2 or 3 years of products sitting in 30-gallon barrels to determine whether or not we liked a product coming out of a 30-gallon barrel. So we had to make a decision on our next shipment if we're going to do 53-gallon barrels or not, if we can get access to them. So we were fortunate that we were actually, it cost us a lot of money, but we were like, we just weren't feeling we didn't feel like the future was in a 30-gallon barrel. So we made the decision to go with the 53. I can't really remember all those conversations as to why. I think we just had, theoretically, we thought that it might be over oaked in a small barrel, and it's true. It kind of we just got, it is. It just imparts a little bit too much oak a little bit too quickly and early on, and especially in a hot environment in Southeast Tennessee. So we were lucky that we made that transition really early to 53s, and then when we fired up the Riverfront Distillery, we had to get a lot more serious about our barrel contract and who it was coming from and all that. And we went and toured, spent some time with Kelvin, great guys, make a great product, and then we spent some time with ISC. And long story short, we landed on ISC, and we worked with them on their innovation, on their toasting and charring and seasoning and all that stuff, especially toasting. We worked a lot with them on toasting, and it came up with a lot of custom toasts that we've been using. So 91 has its own custom toast. 99 Rye has its own custom toast. We have a variety of custom toasts we use depending on what the recipe is. So. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that Chattanooga whiskey is a toasted, aged product, but you got to turn the label around and read it to figure it out. So.
So I'll give you like my quick story on how I discovered Chattanooga. I'm sure you know John. I think Lawrence is that his last name.
Yep.
John came into our store. Great guy. Caught me on a good day and was just like, "Hey, do you want to sit down? New brand of whiskey. We're just coming into the Illinois market." This was probably 7 or 8 years ago. I sit down with him and he's like, "All right, this is 2-year-old Tennessee high malt bourbon." And I'm just thinking, oh God, what did I get myself into? Sitting down with this stuff and tasting it just blew my mind that it was only 2 years old. Like I had to peg them with questions and just figure out how is this possible that it's tasting like this at that young of an age. And kind of brings me to my next point because we started talking all about the specialty malting that you guys use with the different grains, and that it really is just like an if you know brand, and you have to get people to taste it to really understand how good it is. And it kind of like how you were saying it pioneered bigger distilleries to do more experimental things.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of pioneered like my whole idea and thoughts about age statements. That you don't necessarily need an old bourbon for it to taste good. It just really matters what it tastes like. Just taste the bourbon and then go from there. And I know you mentioned a little bit about the different grains that you use. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, on the malting? Because it is high malt. And I know you guys lean into that a lot. And honey malts and caramel malts. Like I think a lot of people don't understand that. And they just think of mash bill and percentages of corn and barley.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, but basically every step of the process matters. And every step of the process drives flavor. Foundationally, it's about roasted and toasted, malted grains. Which that's what malted grains are. They've been you can malt any cereal grain. So, you're steeping the grain in water. It begins to sprout, and then you shovel it into a kiln, and based on time and temperature in the kiln, you're roasting and toasting it, which creates hundreds of different flavor profiles depending on what the cereal grain is. We've even malted corn before, which, we don't prefer. But, so you're taking a cereal grain, you're taking a rye or oat or wheat or barley, and you're making that grain, you're amplifying all, the flavor in dozens of different varieties, essentially. So that's what makes great beer. A lot of people don't know you've got to brew great beer before you can distill it into great whiskey. So that's the foundation of Tennessee High Malt, is utilizing all these roasted and toasted grains. That's why and sometimes in our sales pitch, we like to say that we're the dark chocolate versus every other bourbon's milk chocolate. But then, how you cook it, how you ferment it, how you distill it, how it enters the barrel, how it's aged, where it's aged, how it's finished, and how it exits the barrel, how it enters the bottle. I mean, every single one of these, you got chilled filtration versus non-chilled filtration versus unfiltered, and then you have a variety of different unfilters. That's just in the bottling alone, right? So every single one of those things has an impact on flavor. When it comes to fermenting, we ferment for 7 days. That is a really long time to ferment. I could make a lot more product if I fermented like everybody else at 3 or 4 days. But we don't. because we run our fermenters at 78 degrees. It's a really cold fermentation. We use a single malt yeast that thrives in colder temperatures and allows for the grains to speak into the flavor profile, along with wild yeast into the flavor profile, versus a short hot fermentation where, the objective is to distill it quickly and get it into a barrel quickly. And in that process, you're using, standard bourbon yeast, which thrives in warmer temperatures and has its own kind of flavor profile. Like it can be, a 3-day hot fermented product can have some, the yeast flavor can have some undesirable characteristics that carry through all the way through the barrel. So, we take a lot of pride in our long cold fermentation to kind of protect our recipe and then also express it a little bit more wildly because wild yeast does settle in. And then when you distill it, is it a column still or is it a pot still or is it both? And we do both, right? And that gives us the luxury of determining different flavor profiles and how we want to, what distilling proofs we want to distill at. We've tried them all. We're at 133. And then going into the barrel, different toasts, different chars. So even each batch of bourbon that we or whiskey, or rye or whatever that we're distilling, because we do single malts too. Each batch, each 3,000 gallon fermenter yields 8 barrels. So instead of all 8 barrels going into just a 4-char, what for 91 and 111, half the batch goes into a 4-char with no toast, and then the second half of the batch goes into a 3-char with a custom 91 toast. That's a 40-minute toast on those barrels. So, that alone, then they're going to go away and they're going to age, and then instead of just, you could do a single barrel where you can have a 4-char with no toast, or you can have a 3-char with a custom toast, or you're buying 91 and 111 where those things come together. And now you're getting kind of the best of, that just drives complexity is all that does, right? And that's great. So you've got flavor profiles, more traditional kind of vanilla oak flavor profiles coming from 4-char, and then you've got confectionery, chocolatey flavor profiles coming from a heavy toasted barrel, right? And bringing those things together. And in 91's case, it's a Solera barrel finished bourbon. So, that's just another opportunity to drive flavor. So, and then it's non-chill filtered for 91 and it's totally unfiltered for 111 to allow char sediment to pass through into every batch. In fact, 111 is a single batch bourbon in that every barrel that we dump to bottle for a batch of 111 comes from one fermenter. It was the original 8 barrels that were fermented together. And that's something that you don't see out there. So that kind of speaks to this. Funny, I don't know. Have you talked to John recently? Because he loves to say, we're an if you know brand. But that's kind of funny.
I've never heard him say that. I've talked to him probably not within the last year, but I've always felt that way with this brand. There's still people that come into our store and they're like, what's new? And I'm like, oh, we got this new release from Chattanooga. And they're like, what's Chattanooga? I've never heard of it. And I'm just going how have you not heard of Chattanooga? You have to try it.
That's awesome. It's so fun because, John really does preach that. It was just not that long ago that he was just like, man, I'm telling you, we're just because he spends a lot of time traveling and he's our vice president of business development. And so, whether it's launching a market or developing a key relationship in a market, whether it's New York or whether it's Boston or whether it's Chicago. I mean, he's there and he comes back and he's just like, man, I was wearing my Chattanooga whiskey hat and I was on the subway and there was some guy in the subway that was like, dude, that is my favorite brand. And that's where he comes back and he's like, I just feel like we're an if you know brand. And so it's really funny that you're talking about John and then you said that. But
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's, I mean, it goes back to turning rocks over and look and kind of just to explore what's in your product that you're consuming, right? I mean, that's happening more and more. People they're falling in love with authentic brands in a world of what feels like in a world of AI, right? So now it's like you're looking for brands that you can kind of latch onto and be a huge fan of because of the way they do certain things, and that's what's so fun for us is is there's just so many details, so many tidbits. So that was a long-winded answer, but
that's
as
good.
Far as what Tennessee, I just don't want to talk Tennessee high malt up to. We just use specialty malted grains, and that's what it is. It's like Grant really focuses on intentionality, and he kind of says that through intentionality, the whiskey will tell us what to do. That's really like Grant's motto. Is the whiskey says explore, it says go further, it says try these things, and it's saying like, he says like the long cold fermentations, the distillation proof, the barrel finishing, the Solera barrels, like it is telling us to. That's the whiskey telling us how to express itself. So, in the best way.
Yeah, I think that was exactly what I was looking for. I know it's not a quick, easy, cut and dry answer. And you can also argue that you guys pioneered a lot of other distilleries to really care about all these extra steps, especially in Scotland. Now there's a lot of new Scotch distilleries popping up that are coming out with a really quality 4, 5 year, 6-year-old product, which would be totally unheard of decades ago. But my other quick story for you is we did an episode at the end of last year where we listed our top 5 favorite whiskeys of the year. And my number 1 was your Isla Finish bourbon.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, we can't leave this podcast without talking
we can't,
about
mm-hmm.
that whiskey.
I mean, I always tell people this is my whiskey of the year, and I always warn them, if you don't like Scotch, you're not going to like it, so don't even bother. Right. But if you like peated Scotch and you like bourbon, this might be the best thing that you've ever had in your life. I love drinking it neat, and I love playing around with it in cocktails. It is so fun to use in old fashions, paper planes. Just adds like a whole extra layer of flavor in any cocktail that I try it with.
Mm-hmm. Well, it won't be around for long because it's it's part of our barrel finishing series. So it's those things come and go. I don't know the next time we'll do anything Isla related. So
Well, hopefully you do it again, but if not, I think we bought out the Illinois distributor with everything that they had, which my brother and dad would probably are not happy about, but I'm happy that I can go grab a bottle off the shelf anytime I need one.
Well, hopefully it becomes a wildly great collector's item for you guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
I think I'm sitting on an accumulated case over like a couple months of just picking up bottles here and there when I'm at Gold Eagle.
That's awesome.
And then before we go, I do want to touch on the rye because it is pretty unique too. I I think three or four different types of rye.
Yep. Yeah, it's a 60+% malted rye recipe, 30+% yellow corn recipe. So in the ryes are caramel malted rye, pale malt rye, and chocolate malted rye that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
So yep.
Yeah, the flavors on the caramel and chocolate malts really come through. Another really fun one to play around with in cocktails.
Yeah, and a toast. It's a toasted barrel as well. So we call it the bourbon drinker's rye because it tastes nothing like a traditional raw rye whiskey. It's very confectionery. It's got a lot more like rich bourbon drinking notes to it because of the toasted barrels and because of the roasted and toasted grains.
Yeah, it's got a lot of those like sweet dessert kind of notes.
Yeah,
I made a killer like dessert old fashioned with it. I used chocolate bitters and a vanilla simple syrup that I made. It was phenomenal.
That's awesome.
So yeah, any final thoughts before we kind of wrap this up? I mean, I think I touched on most. We could probably talk for 4 or 5 hours, but I think I asked my big questions that I had and touched on a good amount of things here.
Yeah.
On my end, I just appreciate y'all's support, and Illinois is a very important market for us. E does a great job of covering that market, and yeah, we just want to make sure that our story is kind of a known thing within the whiskey world. I like to say, I mean, we have a lot of great resources for a craft whiskey. I mean, there's once you hit that 50,000 case number, like you're still small compared to all the big guys, but we're a pretty
established.
But we're established. We're kind of a pretty significant player within the world of craft, which is great. And in this kind of crazy world of everybody has all of their vices now, I just think we're going to continue to do what we do, put out a great product. It's high quality. You know where it comes from. You know who's making it. And our goal is not to just be some like international, a national, international conglomerate. It really is we've been trying to do it the right way for 14 years. And as long as I'm running the show, that's how we're going to continue to try and do it. And so, I love being a if brand. And so I appreciate the opportunity to hopefully introduce, your customers, more of your customers and people out, across the country or whoever is listening to Chattanooga Whiskey, dive into the details, dive into the recipes, into the story. It really is a hard fought product over this decade and a half. But when there's a lot of really good brands out there. There's a lot of really good products out there, but there's also a lot of smoke and mirrors out there still, and that is not us. So anybody can ask any question, and we can kind of point to how and why we did that.
Yeah, you can also, just to plug your website, go to your website because you guys list every single breakdown of every single release. Mash bill, grains, everything that went into every release is listed on your website. So if you're interested in any other Chattanooga products or want to see what they have out or coming out, their website is a phenomenal resource. Off the top of my head, I don't know it. If you want to plug it, Tim.
Yeah, it's ChattanoogaWhiskey.com, and also following our Instagram we got a lot of great content on there, just storytelling content and product, product information on there as well. And that's at Chat Whiskey, chat with 2 T's. So that's our Instagram. And then also sign up for our newsletter. We really don't use our newsletter that often, and we do it when we're doing product releases mostly, or maybe an event here and there. So it's not like something where you wake up every morning with a Chattanooga Whiskey email in your inbox. But I think following our newsletter is a great resource as well. And, we're super accessible. Email info. We get emails all the time at info@chattanooga which I'm on that. I'm not, the first one to respond, but I see everything that comes through, and we get a lot of good questions and a lot of fans actually that just want to say, hey, I've been drinking your product for a long time, and I want you guys to know that I'm a big fan, and that means the world to us. So,
nice.
Very good.
Well, Tim, thank you for your time. Jake, obviously Chattanooga's got some pretty big distribution, but if you're in the Chicagoland area or you're in one of the states that Gold Eagle ships to, Jake, where are some other places they can buy Chattanooga whiskey from?
Yeah, I was going to say, you said you're in about half the country. We ship to about 40 states. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're not in a state that has Chattanooga, would highly recommend going to goldeaglewine.com or downloading our app on the Apple App Store, Google Play Store. I promise we will always have whatever Chattanooga has out available, just because I am a huge fan of Chattanooga whiskey. So you can order right from our website at goldeagle.com. We already have a coupon code created from when E was on the podcast. So BM Chat, and that's also with 2 T's, BMCHATT will get you 10% off any Chattanooga product. I would highly recommend, which we haven't really talked about, but our barrel pick of Chattanooga is really, really good. 4 years old. Definitely tastes like it could be 8 or 9 years old, 118 proof, just packed with flavor. But that is available and starting to get pretty low. But also follow us on Instagram at Gold Eagle Wine. Follow us on Facebook at Gold Eagle Spirits. And yeah, come by, pick up a bottle or shop online for some Chattanooga. Back to Bourbon Matters.
Jake, if people want to find our interview with E or any of our other episodes, where can they do that at?
Yeah, find us on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, or any other podcast platform. Watch us on Spotify and YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, rate, share the show with your friends. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Bourbon Matters.
Awesome. All right, Tim. Well, thanks for the story. Thanks for all the information on Chattanooga whiskey. We're really glad you could be on with us tonight. And other than that, cheers, guys.
Thank you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.